starting with the Atlanta Hawks. I only have one thing that's really happened to them in the free agent period, and I gave them a C plus for their free agent period, and it's just the trade to acquire guard Dyson Daniels, EJ Little, Larry Nance Jr., 2 first-round picks while trading away DeJounte Murray. I'm not sure what you gave them for this one. This was full just trying to get some return back for DeJounte Murray. You're exchanging a full-fledged starter for 1 garbage minutes player and 2 rotational pieces. Getting the return of the 2 first-round picks really makes the trade somewhat worth it. But even then, you saw with the Atlanta Hawks this past year when Trae Young was out, all of the advanced metrics and numbers with DeJounte Murray just on the court instead of both of them. The team was better without Trae Young on the court. And I thought for sure that Trae Young was going to be the piece that you moved because you were going to get more in return from, and the team was already better with Murray on the court. I like Trae Young. I'm not going to be a hater. I really do, and I think he's a really valuable guard in this league. But I thought that he was going to be the piece moved here, not to trade Murray, when, again, all the numbers pointed to the team being better with him on the court than just Murray instead of just Trae Young on the court. So I gave him a C plus for the only really move that they made this offseason so far.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting move. I think as soon as it happened, I texted you. I was like, wow, I can't believe they moved Murray instead of Trae Young. But
Yeah.
it just might be one of those things where playing at Atlanta, you're not in a massive market. And I don't think the common NBA fan knows much about Murray outside of how much they know about Trae Young. Obviously, the very splashy 3-pointers and a couple other things. And frankly, the Atlanta Hawks might have dove into the trade market and looked at what was the best options in terms of what was coming back. And maybe the package from the Pelicans for Murray was higher than anything else that, we heard Trae Young to the Lakers. I'm not exactly sure what they would have sent back. Maybe Austin Reeves and Rui and a couple other pieces. We heard him to the Spurs, but obviously they drafted a guard. They signed Chris Paul. So maybe they just looked out there and the deal for Murray was best, and that's why they moved him instead of Trae Young. I know that in the years after the Pacers Kings trade for Halliburton Sabonis, people are like, man, why didn't they move Fox? Why didn't they move Fox? Well, because nobody wanted Fox in his contract at the time. Mm-hmm. He hadn't taken the next step like he has in the past 2 years with Sabonis. So sometimes you have to realize that there's other teams. I think that's where fans of fan bases go wrong, like Lakers fans, where they think Austin Reeves is a superstar, like Warriors fans that think that Klay Thompson is still an elite defender and a 30-point-a-night scorer when he was getting benched for a white guy with an afro last season. So it's just one of those things where the Pelicans are building a very, very exciting young team, and they identified the piece that was going to take them to the next level. And frankly, I would have hated this trade for the Pelicans if it was Trae Young. So on their side of it, I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I think the basketball fan base is much more regional than it is for, like, when we talk about football. There's much more like a national fan base to it, to where people are paying attention to what's going on across every single team, or a lot of the teams, at least the major markets and the successful teams. With basketball, you're right. It's like a lot more regional. You're paying attention to your team or what you're watching. You watch your guys night in, night out. You're not paying attention to what's going on with the rest of the league a lot of the time. So,
which is funny because globally, basketball kicks football's ass.
Yeah.
Like across the world, we have obviously football, soccer, and then you have, basketball. Like nobody gives a shit about the NFL overseas, except for maybe London a little bit. But basketball is a global sport, one of the biggest global sports. But when it comes to the teams in the NBA, I don't think you could name a lot of players, and I don't think you can name a lot of people, including me, that could tell you about the Hawks roster 1 through 10 right now. You know what I mean? It's just, I could tell you the Boston Celtics roster 1 through 10, obviously. Any of the playoff teams I could tell you, but the Hawks, not so much.
Yeah. And it's funny because you and I talking about football on the channel as well, you and I would have a much easier time going through an entire starting all 22 roster for a random football team than we would have 1 through 10 for a basketball team.
Absolutely.